President Mnangagwa has declared the El Nino-induced drought a state of disaster and called for help from outside. The drought has left more than 2.7 million people food insecure and in need of aid. It is projected that from this month going forward, vulnerable groups will exceed the 2.7 million figure as communities exhaust their reserves. Although government has a clear plan on how to approach the situation, they have also called on Zimbabweans in the diaspora, international community, United Nations agencies, financial institutions, development partners, private sector and churches to help. Gada gives us the following report.
It's a sorry situation for most farmers in the country. The agricultural season has been nothing short of a disaster. And now the country faces a tough period with food insecurity groups projected to grow.
While we have been able so far to fend for this food insecurity population, the El Nino drought has now compounded our current situation with food insecurity levels raised beyond the projected 2.7 million people.
On Wednesday, Zimbabwe's leader declared a state of disaster. He said this was despite the reserves, which was 189,568 metric tons of cereals.
My administration has made a decision to allocate 138,905 metric tons of surplus wheat towards our strategic grain reserve. This will give a combined total of about 356,000 metric tons of cereals in our strategic grain reserve.
The country expects 868,273 metric tons from this season.
Our nation faces a food cereal deficit of nearly 680,000 metric tons of grain. This deficit will be bridged by imports.
It's a big challenge for the government, and they are banking on the private sector participation in feeding the nation.
Top on our priority is securing food for all Zimbabweans. No Zimbabwean must succumb to or die from hunger.
The administration has indicated that resources will now be redirected towards that.
All available grain in the country will be secured through competitive prices and a prompt payment towards encouraging farmers to release and sell available grain, including to the Grain Marketing Board.
The country will be banking on the winter crops to bridge the gap along with other measures in place. Availability of clean water is also on government's agenda. In the face of drought, many in the rural areas had resorted to selling livestock.
Farmers will be supported to prevent deaths or distress sales of livestock.
By declaring a state of disaster, Zimbabwe has followed in the footsteps of Malawi, Zambia, countries in the region equally affected. The hope is that the country will get more help for its population. For ZTN Prime, I'm Gada in Harare.
The president has declared a state of disaster by invoking Section 27, subsection 1 of the Civil Protection Act. It provides that if at any time it appears to the president that any disaster of such a nature and extent happens, that extraordinary measures are necessary to assist and protect the persons affected or likely to be affected by the disaster in any area of the country. The president may, in such a manner as he considers fit, declare that, with effect from a date specified by him, a state of disaster exists within an area or areas specified by him in the declaration. We now cross over to World Food Programme, Zimbabwe Deputy Country Director Christine Mendes, to discuss more on Zimbabwe's food security. Now, good evening, Christine. Zimbabwe has declared a state of disaster after the El Nino-induced drought, which destroyed most of the crops in the country. Does this help the country get the urgent help that it requires?
Zimbabwe's declaration of a state of disaster due to the El Nino-induced drought is significant because it highlights the severity of the situation. It also underscores the need for us as the World Food Programme, UN agencies, development and humanitarian partners to work together in a coordinated manner to make sure that we can get assistance to those who will be severely affected by the drought.
And what will be the immediate reaction of the WFP in such situations? What is your plan of action?
We have already been consulting with government, with development partners and other UN agencies on what could be the possible implications of drought. And so that means that we will now work harder together with government in the lead to draw up a plan. And part of that is going to entail participation in the assessments that are ongoing that will determine how many people and which locations will be affected at the peak of the drought, which is expected to be around October.
Konapo, ipapo pa ZTN Prime, DSTV channel 294, the place to be.